Devon Archer, a key business associate of Hunter Biden, ignored reporters' questions today when he arrived at a congressional office building to give closed-door testimony to the House Oversight Committee. Republicans leading the investigation say Archer now can provide key evidence which they believe will link Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings to his father, President Biden. Let's start there with Jay O'Brien, ABC News correspondent in D.C., watching this story. Do we know specifically what the Republicans are hoping for, Jay?
Well, John, you made that exact point. They're hoping to find evidence that creates a concrete link between Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings and President Biden. So far, despite every single Republican on the House Oversight Committee and others saying that that link is there, they've offered no evidence of that linkage. That's one of the reasons why they're turning to this guy named Devon Archer. He's a former business associate of Hunter Biden's, and he says that he was in the room for conversations between Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. What those conversations were about, though, is still very much unclear. We don't know what was said today because it was a closed-door testimony, kind of like a deposition. But what we do know is that we saw Democrats who were in that room emerge from that room and characterize Devon Archer's testimony. One of them is Dan Goldman, who's a Democratic congressman of New York, and he says that Archer testified that he witnessed 20 conversations over roughly a decade period in which Hunter Biden put then Vice President Biden or former Vice President Biden, depending upon the time frame, on the phone with his business associates. But Goldman says that Archer testified that those conversations were innocuous. They were pleasantries. They were about the weather or about families or about things of that nature. Goldman says that Archer never testified that they were about business. So if Goldman is correct, this linkage, this evidence that Republicans were trying to find of Hunter Biden being linked to Joe Biden in terms of a business relationship is still very much not there. All of that to say, though, we haven't heard from Republicans who are inside that room yet. They haven't come forward to address the cameras or talk to reporters about what Devon Archer said, so we're still somewhat in the early stages of exactly what went on behind those closed doors.
Do we know if Devon Archer and Hunter Biden had some sort of falling out like Cohen and Trump, or does somebody have the hammer over his head compelling him to testify?
Well, Devon Archer and Hunter Biden definitely are not in business together anymore. The extent of their personal relationship I'm not terribly familiar with, but I can tell you this, that Devon Archer was invited to testify by the committee, but this committee is conducting an aggressive investigation into President Biden and his family. So if Devon Archer chose not to testify or create or kind of dragged his feet, there's every reality in which the committee would likely have subpoenaed him and forced him to testify. And also keep in mind here, when you go before this committee, while he's not in a room that looks like your typical committee hearing on Capitol Hill that you may have seen on TV, he is still very much under oath. It's illegal to lie to Congress. So they're pushing him on the extent to which President Biden may or may not have been involved in his son's business relationship, and how much Devon Archer gives forward and discloses, that we don't know the answer to. But we know that Republicans have this thesis already. Jim Comer, who runs this committee, has said that he believes, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that President Biden was connected to his son Hunter's business dealings. He just hasn't provided evidence of that assertion yet, but the committee is looking for it, despite its chair saying, look, I already know this exists.
Isn't there another, and pardon me for my ignorance here, not having this in front of me, but there's another so-called Comer witness who was MIA for a long time. Turns out he's fled the nation and he's under indictment for dealings with China. I forgot the gentleman's name, but that's another witness, correct?
Yeah, and that's a totally, somewhat separate element of this investigation. So this committee is conducting kind of two investigations at once. One of them is into Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings, right? And then the other is into what the committee alleges was political influence on the investigation into Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings. While the U.S. attorney has said that those allegations are false, that he didn't get any political influence, and the White House and the Department of Justice have also denied that, Republicans say that that influence seems to have existed. So they're running two different investigations at once. Devon Archer is on the business dealings. This other witness that you're talking about, the MIA witness, He kind of fits into both investigations, but those are both still very much ongoing. That individual was, by the way, indicted, but has alleged that that indictment is not accurate.
Yeah, just to be clear, Devon Archer, no charges pending against him, correct? Is this a voluntary witness?
Well, it's, again, very murky. He's got charges against him, but for a totally unrelated case that has nothing to do with Hunter Biden and business dealings. But he is facing charges. That's not connected to anything here in any way, shape, form, or function. He is testifying voluntarily.
And then, Jay, didn't Senator Johnson, before the power switched in our House of Lords, didn't he have a year-long investigation into Hunter Biden as well?
And Senator Grassley as well. There's been a lot of investigations into Hunter Biden's business dealings. And what no one has come up with yet is, again, concrete evidence that creates a linkage between President Biden and his son's finances. And every single one of the Republicans who run these investigations say that that linkage exists, but they have yet to offer evidence of said linkage. That's why this committee is hearing testimony from Devon Archer. They said it in the letter to his lawyer inviting Archer to testify in the first place, that they believe he has that evidence. What we haven't seen yet is any Republican emerge from behind those closed doors and say, this is the evidence that Archer gave us.
Well, if nothing else, this is a segment we spent on this station talking about Hunter Biden instead of Donald Trump.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of congressional Republicans have said privately, even publicly, that's something that they are somewhat interested in.
Yeah, I bet. Any word on Hunter's laptop? I'm still waiting to get that resolved. What's on the laptop? Let me see the images. Let me see the text messages. Let me see the emails. Do we know?
I'm not sure what you mean to that question.
I don't even know why I asked that question. I just keep hearing about the laptop, but I never have seen anything about the laptop.
Well, there's certainly reporting out there as it relates to the laptop. House Republicans have looked at the laptop as well. It's an element of their investigation. It's certainly an element of the ongoing Hunter Biden probes.
Jay O'Brien, thank you. Much appreciated, sir. We'll check back in with you as the story develops.
Thank you.
Take care.